discussions about defunding the police make any sense at all for the security of the nation, and I don't think defunding,
as you are undertaking your investigation, as political
dossier, they wouldn't have been able to establish probable cause. It was,
did the dossier come from President Trump's political opponents?
There's no effort that I'm aware of to defund your office, and I assume that you would have construed that if someone had made an effort to defund the Office of Special Counsel, your office, as you were undertaking your investigation, as political interference, to the extent that that was being done to try to impair or impinge on your investigation. Is that an accurate statement?
yeah, I mean, if it were our office, our team, I guess I'd have to know the basis of that to see if I thought it was, political or,
let's say it's because people
spending too much money.
Sure. Let's say it's because people disagreed with the work that you were doing. They didn't like your investigation. They disagreed fundamentally with decisions you were making. I presume you would construe that as political interference.
Special counsel should operate independently. That's the whole purpose of special counsel. So,
I certainly agree. And again, I thank you for being here. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Durham, I appreciate you being here today. Sobering, I think, is a pretty good word. I think that's a good description of what we're talking about. When I read your report and as we talk about it, when I'm in the district, very often one of the major concerns is the weaponization of investigations and the Department of Justice against certain people in our society. And so, yes or no, did the FBI place significant reliance on information given to them by President Trump's political opponents?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that one?
Did the FBI, did they place significant reliance on information given to them by President Trump's opponents?
The Crossfire hurricane investigation, the FISA in particular, the FISA and Carter Page, the Bureau had concluded itself, absent the dossier, they wouldn't have been able to establish probable cause. It was,
did the dossier come from President Trump's political opponents?
It was funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. So in that degree, yes, it came. That's how it was paid for.
Can you connect the dots between between the Clinton campaign and the investigation of the FBI?
Yeah. We were investigating, did investigate. What was behind that investigation? How did it get started? Was it properly predicated as a full investigation by the FBI? And why did it then continue even after Director Mueller had found a lack of sufficient evidence concerning conspiracy or collusion?
Mr. Durham, is that what you call sobering? Would that be sobering to you?
It's sobering to me in connection with this investigation is the FBI, the people who were involved in the Crossfire hurricane investigation, ignoring exculpatory information, discarding information that was inconsistent with the investigative narrative, with using information, in this instance from the Steele dossier, to establish probable cause to electronically surveil a United States citizen who happened to be a Naval Academy graduate. Those things are sobering to me.
I would agree with that. Did the FBI ever fail to take or delay taking action in an investigation involving Hillary Clinton?
I didn't. That wasn't. Well, there's a portion of the report that relates to the disparate treatment. So did the FBI delay? There are 3 instances that are identified in the report where the FBI's investigative efforts were considered considerably more disciplined than was the case with respect to Mr. Trump. More
discipline, you mean bias? And let me move on, Mr. Durham. I don't want to run out of time. Did the FBI give the Clinton campaign a defensive briefing?
They gave, in a particular manner, the FBI gave Mrs. Clinton's legal representatives a debriefing of a defensive nature, yes.
Why wasn't the same done for the Trump campaign and President Trump?
We explored that during the course of the investigation. What we learned is set out in the report. It would appear from at least what we were told, the very little thought went into whether they should give anybody in the Trump campaign a defensive briefing, and they didn't do
A
it.
lot of thought went into giving Hillary Clinton's campaign a defensive briefing, apparently, but not President Trump.
In one instance, I think you're referring to the submission of a FISA application in that matter against the foreign interest was premised on them giving a defensive briefing to Mrs. Clinton and some other political...
Mr. Durham, is it safe to say that the Clinton campaign colluded with the Russians to accuse Donald Trump of colluding with the Russians?
I could not phrase it that way. I could say is that the Clinton campaign funded the information that showed up in the dossier. The Clinton campaign funded the information that was put together concerning an alleged secret communications channel between Trump and Alpha Bank, which was presented to the FBI through Mr. Sussman. So, yeah, there are those things that definitely occurred, and the evidence establishes that.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. I appreciate your service. I'll yield back to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Durham, Carter Page is an American citizen who, Naval Academy grad, served our country. Why not just talk to him before you spy on him?
In this instance, I mean, I don't know if people looked at this in the report. There was a particular piece of information that had been given to Michael Isikoff and appeared in a Yahoo News article on September 23rd, in which Mr. Isikoff lays out what he's obviously been told, and it's clearly the information from Steele. But it also included a statement that a senior law enforcement official confirmed that Carter Page was on the radar screen. That matter was never referred for investigation as to who leaked that. This is an investigation that's supposed to be closely held, confidential, sensitive investigating, and that's never referred to, nobody ever looked at. Who's the senior law enforcement officer who gave the information to Michael Isikoff that Carter Page was on their radar screen? That's not number one.
Who do you think it was?
Mr. Chairman, the time is well expired. The witness could answer the question. You can't ask another one.
I appreciate the ranking member for pointing that fact out.
Okay, I'm not sure. Am I supposed to answer or not? Am I done?
I'll let you answer.
Oh, okay. So then, with respect to Carter Page, within 2 days of that article, wrote a letter to Director Comey saying, I didn't do the things that are suggested. I didn't meet with these people. I'm willing to sit down and talk to the FBI. You know, tell me when and where, essentially.
He offered to be interviewed. The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for unanimous consent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me submit into the record an article dated 6/18/23. After years of political hype, the Durham inquiry failed to deliver. Ask unanimous consent, and then ask unanimous consent to place into the record this language from a letter directed to Mr. Durham on May 15, 2023. The Federal Bureau of Investigation appreciates the Special Counsel's independent review. We also appreciate your acknowledgement of the extensive cooperation the FBI provided to your team throughout the review, including production of nearly 7 million pages of documents, assignment of full-time FBI special agents to assist in your fact-finding process, and provision of FBI technical...
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Special Counsel Durham, for being here today. As has been noted, it's been 4 years and $6.5 million of an investigation. And the Durham report makes no new recommendations to change FBI policy or procedure. It does not conclude that the Crossfire Hurricane investigation should not have been opened, and it even acknowledges that the Clinton campaign did nothing worthy of prosecution. Sadly, the Durham report dredges up allegations from unsuccessful prosecutions, including claims that have been rejected by judge and jury. The flaws of the Durham process were so troubling that some aides resigned in protest. I did Google and, in fact, read the news articles around the resignation of Nora Donahue, that it is reported that she resigned because of pressure on you and the special counsel group to produce a report or an interim report prior to the presidential election. You can't comment on Nora Donahue's personnel matter. Were you ever encouraged, persuaded, pressured to issue an interim or report prior to the presidential election?
You see, without hesitation, I was not pressured into doing anything.
Was it suggested to you?
It was not suggested to me.
And yet it might have been suggested to someone who worked under you, separate from you.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Mr. Durham, would it have been a dereliction of duty if the FBI sat on its hands and did not investigate with the information they had in front of them? Isn't it true?
I'm sure the Bureau has an obligation to investigate. They should investigate information that they receive from the public or otherwise. And generally speaking, yeah, they have an obligation to look at and assess information.
And in this case, they had an affirmative duty to investigate. Would you agree?
They had an affirmative duty to assess the information they had gotten from the Australian diplomat.
Which would be an investigation. You were assigned to investigate that investigation. Mr. Durham, when did you first meet with Attorney General Barr about a potential investigation into the Mueller report, Mueller investigation?
You know, I was appointed in May of 2019. I had met Attorney General Barr after, not in connection with these matters, but I think I initially met the Attorney General when I became the U.S. Attorney for Connecticut.
Let me just put the calendar together. It was on March 22nd that the Mueller report was submitted to Attorney General Barr. Would you agree with that?
That's March 22nd.
And according to public records, you met with Attorney General Barr on March 25th, 3 days later.
Okay.
And on March 24th, Attorney General Barr released his so-called summary document of a 448-page report, which blatantly mischaracterized the findings in the Mueller report. Would you agree with that?
No.
Did you discuss the Mueller report during your meeting with Mr. Barr on March 25th?
I don't believe so. I think that
the timing was 3 days after he received the report, and you don't think in your meeting you talked about the Mueller report?
I don't think that was. I think it was when I was meeting the Attorney General because I had become the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut in mid to late February.
Maybe you could search your memory and get back to us on that. It's troubling to me because it is clear you were brought in by Attorney General Barr the same week the Mueller report was released and the day after his misleading letter, which hung out there for 25 days before the public got our hands and our eyes on the redacted report. You were hired to investigate the investigators. 1 week after you met with Mr. Barr, on April 13th, Attorney General Barr's counselor, Seth DeCharme, emailed you offering assistance on behalf of Barr, saying, quote, John, the AG has made me aware of the redacted material you're working with him on, and he asked me to provide you with my support and assistance. Is that true?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
I don't remember the date, but that sounds right.
And that's only April. So I'm wondering if you weren't yet put into this field. Donald Trump was very vocal on Twitter, as he always has been, about his belief that the Mueller investigation should never have been taken. Are you aware of his tweets?
I know that the former president was a tweeter, yes.
He was a tweeter. Some Republicans on this committee believed that part of your purpose was to exonerate Mr. Donald Trump. I want to take you back to your opening statement. It's at paragraph 4. As you know, Mr. Durham, you said this morning, if repeated or left unaddressed, these issues could result in significant national security risks and further erode public faith in our justice system. We now sit with a former president indicted 37 counts around the documents, the classified documents that he took, he held, he moved, he concealed, he lied about, he showed to other people, 37 counts. If repeated or left unaddressed, these issues could result in significant national security risks and further erode public faith in our justice system. I thank you for your service, for pointing out what really matters when we have a very dangerous former president and criminal indictments to come. A mess of Mr. Trump's own making. I am baffled by this committee's lifting up of a corrupt president.
The gentlelady has expired.
And I thank you for indulging me just as you indulge yourself. Thank you.
God bless you. That's right.
God bless
Full
you.
opportunity. Mr. Durham, if you can go one more round.
Do this every day?
Yeah. Well, this is relatively calm to some hearings that we have, Mr. If you can go one more, then we'll give you a break, but we'll recognize the gentleman from California, and we'll give you a quick break, maybe 5-10 minutes, and we'll come back and finish. Sure. But the gentleman from California is recognized for 5.
Mr. Durham, several people today, including Ranking Member Madler and 3 representatives from California, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Swalwell, and Mr. Liu, have attacked you. Ranking Member Nadler called your report a political exercise with ethical ambiguity. Mr. Liu called you a partisan hack. However, it seems that they're taking issue not so much with the conclusions of your report as those of Mr. Mueller's report, which concluded that the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. That conclusion directly contradicted statements made on the record by those representatives. For example, Mr. Schiff in 2017-2018 made statements such as, the Russians offered help, the campaign accepted help, the Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help, and that is pretty damning. He also said there's clear evidence on the issue of collusion. He said, I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight. Mr. Durham,
the gentleman yield?
Are those statements supported by the conclusions of the Mueller report?
The gentleman yield?
No. Mr. Durham, are those statements supported by the Mueller report?
I don't believe so.
Mr. Nadler stated, it's clear that the campaign concluded, and there's a lot of evidence of that. The question is, was the president involved? Mr. Nadler also said there was obviously a lot of collusion. Mr. Durham, were those statements supported by the Mueller report?
I don't believe they are supported by the Mueller report.
Mr. Liu stated in a press release in March of 2017, the bombshell revelation that U.S. officials have information that suggests Trump associates may have colluded with the Russians means we must pause the entire Trump agenda. We may have an illegitimate president of the United States currently occupying the White House. Mr. Durham, did the Mueller report establish that we had an illegitimate president occupying the White House?
Not to my knowledge.
Mr. Swalwell stated in 2018, in our investigation, we saw strong evidence of collusion. Did the Mueller report support that there was strong evidence of collusion?
Not to my knowledge.
Even here today, we had Mr. Schiff raise questions about your public statement during the investigation, saying this somehow violated a DOJ policy. However, Mr. Mueller himself made a public statement in January of 2019. This is an article from CNN, headline, Mueller's office disputes BuzzFeed report that Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie to Congress. So whatever policy there might exist in the DOJ with respect to public statements by special counsels, it would seem that you and Mr. Mueller would be on equal footing with respect to it. Is that correct?
It would seem so.
Mr. Nadler, Ranking Member Nadler also suggested that we're only here today because of the recent indictments of President Trump. However, you received your assignment as special counsel in 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct. 2020, the special counsel's in 2020.
In 2020. And was that before or after the events alleged in the recent indictments by the president?
That was before.
And is it customary for a special counsel to come testify in Congress upon the issuance of the report?
This is my first experience of this sort of thing. So I know that Director Mueller had occasion to testify before Congress, so I guess this is not unique.
So it's pretty likely you would have been here whether or not the president had been recently indicted.
Yes.
Contrary to Ranking Member Nadler's statement. I want to quote from you a part of your report where you say, there are reasons why in examining politically charged and high-profile issues, the office must exercise and has exercised special care. One of those statements you said is that even when prosecutors believe that they can obtain a conviction, there are some instances in which it may not be advisable to expend government time and resources on a criminal prosecution, particularly where it could create the appearance, even if unfounded, that the government is seeking to criminalize the behavior of political opponents or punish the activities of a specific political party or campaign. Could you just expound on that a little bit, this idea that there are prudential considerations that may counsel against prosecution, even if there has been some technical violation of a statute?
Sure. The standard principles of federal prosecution include, kind of as a bedrock, that you ought not to bring a prosecution unless you believe in good faith that there's sufficient evidence to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the jury will convict, and that a conviction can be sustained on appeal. There may be those instances in which you're pretty well convinced that a crime was committed and can identify the person who committed it, but you can't in good faith say a jury is likely to convict in this case. We believe that a jury will convict and that we can sustain it on appeal. Those are the principles that we tried to apply here, that we followed here. They're the same principles I've followed for 40 years as a federal prosecutor.
But what are you referring to when you say that there might be additional considerations involving the perception that you're criminalizing the behavior of political opponents?
Yeah, I mean, these are difficult things. For example, taking this case, I think all the members of the committee have had access to, whether they took advantage or not, I don't know, but we filed a classified appendix here, right? So there are some prosecutions where it may very well be that it looks like, and you think you can prove the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, but because of the classified nature of much of your evidence, it's never going to see the light of day. So that might preclude a prosecution. You know, things of that sort come up that are part of the prudential judgment that a prosecutor has to make in these matters.
I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. We'll take a short break, short recess. If we can come back in 10 minutes, so at 12:05, we'll come back, but give everyone a short break before we resume.